This is a cricket podcast.
Just looking at the England squad that they've brought over, it is a strong squad.
Two mates obsessed with the game.
Usually I would do best here, but I'm going to admit something to you here. The here in the SuperSmash has been bang average.
Covering all the on-field action.
There's a big difference between getting 199 and getting 200, I reckon.
That's very true. Yeah, the mental side of things, right, is you've got to go at 10 and over as opposed to 9.999 and over.
This is the Back of a Length podcast.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Back of a Length podcast. Renee here with you as always. Mark is here too.
Who is mostly here, apart from when he's not in hospital or away on holiday. Hello, how are you?
I know as well. You're on a good run here, Mark.
I am.
Although we cut it pretty close tonight. It is so stormy outside, so disgusting. We are doing this remotely, safe in our houses.
We are, and for the second episode in a row, we are going to start off by hoping that everybody is safe. Everybody heeded the advice from the government, local councils, local boards, everything like that.
I tell you what though, Mark, I've been keeping myself entertained this past week by catching all the action from the final round of the SuperSmash. Last week we talked about the three teams that had made the finals, and on Thursday was the first elimination final. And I tell you what, Mark, I can't predict a thing.
Yeah, please.
I said Otago would win at home.
Please tell me all about your predictions and how confident you were in those predictions.
I was confident that the Volts and the Sparks would at least make the finals. I even called both teams to win the finals, and they both did not win at home at the University of Otago Oval. I honestly couldn't believe it.
In order to win the finals, you've got to get to the finals, and unfortunately, the Volts and the Sparks did neither. Your predictions were a little bit askew. However, I don't really know to start with the women's final, because all we've talked about all season is how amazing the Blaze are and how they're unbeatable and they've got, player after player after player. Then the Auckland Hearts beat them last week in the last round of the league format. And then they got to the finals. So they beat they were top of the league, so they automatically qualified for the finals.
Correct.
But then didn't perform.
No, they didn't. They have been depleted by their key players going to the White Ferns, more than any other team. I mean, they're not the only team. We talked about the Sparks losing Susie Bates and Eden Carson. The Magicians have lost Lea Tahuhu, but the Blaze had it the worst. But yeah, they really, really crumbled under pressure.
You look at the four big players that the Blaze have lost, right? They've lost Sophie Devine, they've lost Mealy Kerr, they've lost Jess Kerr, and they have lost Maddie Green.
Mm-hmm.
They're four massive players, and that's the spine of your back. Well, the three players there. So you've got Sophie Devine, Mealy Kerr, and Maddie Green are your 2-3-4 or 2-3-5.
Yeah.
They're big players to miss. And then Jess Kerr is one of your protagonists in the bowling department. So, they're really big players to miss. You look at Susie Bates for the Sparks, for example, she's a big player to miss, but in isolation, right? You would back other players to step up and perform, but the Blaze have just lost the spine of their team, and it shows.
I think they lost their experience and their senior players more than anything, because the Sparks still had Kate Ibrahim and the Magicians still had Amy Satterthwaite there. So I think that was also a lot to do with it. I mean, their most senior player would be Lee Kasprick, and she was captaining the team, and she's great, but she just doesn't strike me as that real team leader.
It's hard to say whether I would imagine it's probably actually quite easy to say if the Blaze had all of their players back, they probably would have gone on to win the finals, right? But if the Sparks had their White Ferns, would they have gotten through in the eliminator final? It's hard to say. Susie Bates is irreplaceable, but Eden Carson, did they really miss her too much? I don't really know. But this is a thing for the Blaze, right? Is, you've now got to cater for the fact that women's cricket is getting more international tournaments. The players are going to be away from your squad a lot more. How do you actually cope with that? Because you look at the men's cricket, right? And England's test players, New Zealand's test players very rarely get to represent their county or their province or whatever you want to call it in New Zealand. but the teams still are able to pull on a good resource point. Women's cricket, for me, doesn't quite seem there yet, especially for the Blaze. They're so reliant on their international players that when those players go away, the team is completely different. So, we are seeing women's cricket in New Zealand move in the right direction with giving sort of, comparable pay across women's and men's cricket, which hopefully attracts more women into the game to make the squad depth a lot stronger moving forward. And that's the hope for the Blaze and also the Sparks and the Aces, the Hearts and every other women's team moving forward, is that they can build their depth and become more competitive come what may.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing the competition move in that direction. In the last 3 years, we've started to see household names outside the White Fern squad. So I think you just need to give it more time, more resource. And in a few years, you should have that full strength team domestically, and your White Ferns can slot in and out of it as they can, much like the men's do.
Yeah, absolutely. We do hope to see that squad depth or the strength in depth in the squad moving forward. But yeah, talking about the final, the Blaze just weren't able to put on a performance. You watched the final, I believe, or you caught up on the final?
Yeah. It was mostly a 95 from Kate Anderson of the Magicians, or 62 balls that set the tone, and the Blaze just didn't get there, and it was the Magicians all the way. It was a lovely way for Amy Satterthwaite to hang up her T20 game, winning the SuperSmash, as she did announce her retirement from all forms of cricket at the end of this season.
Yeah, and a really nice touch as well from the Canterbury side, or the Canterbury management, I guess it is, that Hagley Oval for the remainder of Amy Satterthwaite's games will be actually changed to the Satterthwaite Oval as opposed to the Hagley Oval, which I thought was a really nice touch.
Yeah, really, really nice. So congratulations on your career to Amy Satterthwaite. We are such big fans. Big fans. Okay, let's take a look at the men's team. It was the Brave playing the Woakes in Otago in that elimination final. I just want to say here, Mark, it was a 73 from Cartney Clark. And I was like, oh, that's nice, because you remember last season I would not be quiet about Cartney Clark. And this season, Cartney Clark's been a bit quiet.
He has been a little bit quiet. We picked him at the start at the SuperSmash. I picked him as my player to watch. We always pick players to watch across the formats. And Cartney Clark was mine, but he has been a little bit quiet. However, in the game where he was probably most needed to step up to get the Brave through to the final, he was able to do that, a fine 73, which allowed the Brave to put on 199. So just shy of 10 and over. One run short. If it was just a wide or no ball or something like that, I love a round number. But the Brave went able to get there.
I love it when the team has to go in and be like, oh, now we have to get 200. There's a big difference between getting 199 and getting 200, I reckon.
That's very true. Yeah, the mental side of things, right, is you've got to go at 10 and over as opposed to 9.999 and over, or whatever it is.
It sounds ridiculous, but cricket plays with your mind. But it didn't matter, because the Woakes could only get 160. So that was the end of their SuperSmash campaign. I want to give a little shout out to Josh Finney. He got 43, I think. Little one to keep our eye on there.
Yeah, a good little innings in what was an unfortunate end for their campaign. Yeah, I haven't really seen too much of Josh Finney this year, but to be able to put on 43 in a sort of a mediocre chase, I'm going to call it, because if a team puts on 199 batting first, you've got to assume that it's a good wicket. So for the Volts at home to only get 160 is a little bit disappointing in what is their biggest game over the last few years. Look at last year, and they finished bottom of the table. They were a bit average. This year, I feel like they started off relatively the same as last year, but then they put a good run of results together to get themselves into the elimination final. They did, yeah. To then go out with a bit of a damp squib, which is such a shame. But yeah, Josh Finney, a nice innings, which give them a respectable score. And yeah, we'll definitely be keeping an eye on him over the next campaign. Yeah, on to Saturday, it was the Kings batting first in the final, got 154 at Hagley Oval. Cole McConkey with a half-century captain's knock there. Great season for him, actually. I've been quite impressed with him. Yep, sure. But the Brave, just too good. Tim Seifert got his half-century, all around good scores, and the Brave went back-to-back titles. Yeah, and I guess, I don't want to kind of rabbit on about this point in women's cricket, but the Brave have lost quite a few of their international players, but they've got the strength and depth to be able to continue to provide
Yeah,
or produce really good players, right? Probably
I
more
think.
so than any other team across the competition in the men's format.
Yeah, yes and no. I think that the Brave are used to not having their players, whereas they go into this tournament and they're like, okay, we might have Mitchell Satner, Neil Wagner, Kane Williamson. It's a very
Yeah.
long shot there, but have Kane Williamson, or Tim Southey, and they build their squad around whether those players could slot in and out. Whereas I feel like the Blaze build their squad, including their White Ferns, and when the White Ferns have to leave, they fail to replace them.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying earlier in terms of you've got to build a squad that has the depth to cater for the fact that women's international players are going to be less frequent in the domestic tournaments. The Brave have been able to do that. I feel like even the Auckland Aces in the men's format have struggled to do that because, they had the likes of Martin Guptill, Kyle Jamieson. When they go, we've seen this season, they've just not really been able to replace them. Like top of the order, they've not had, they've got George Worker, who's got as many runs as I don't know, a long jumper or a really bad joke there, but they've failed to replace their international players. Yeah. But you look at New Zealand cricket in general, and there really isn't that amount of depth. To go from, Martin Guptill, for example, for Auckland has been the Black Caps opener in ODIs and T20s for a good 10, 15 years, right? To be able to replace that experience is difficult, but they just haven't been able to do it.
No. That they haven't.
That's where the Brave stand out against any other team, is that they don't have Kane Williamson, they don't have Tim Southey, they don't have Trent Bolt, they don't have their other Black Caps players, but they've still got a really, really strong squad.
Yeah, I think that Auckland probably just have some very average players at the moment. Worker, Chapman just aren't standing up, in all honesty.
No, well, Mark Chapman especially.
I think that they should stand up, and I think Auckland cricket are hanging on for them to actually, do something extraordinary. But it hasn't come to fruition for a number of seasons now.
Yeah, you can probably hear the frustration in my voice when I talk about the Auckland Aces because I don't get how the biggest city in New Zealand doesn't have a pool to be able to produce good squad depth. You've got 2 million people out of a 5.5 million people population, and you only can produce George Worker and Mark Chapman. Just don't get it.
George Worker's not even from Auckland.
Anyway, that's true. Yeah, well, that's the thing. They've had to go out of town to get a player that they think is half decent who isn't. But anyway, the Brave did end up winning that final. So that is 2 in a row for the Brave.
2 in a row. No, usually we would pick a player to watch or some top performers from across the season, but really, there's only one name. Dean.
Are we going to have a jingle?
Foxcroft.
Oh, Dean Foxcroft. No, thank God for that. Jesus.
No, Dean Foxcroft. He can bat, he can bowl, he can catch. He is, my understanding is he is now eligible to play for New Zealand, having finished his 3 years that he has to basically live in New Zealand for. Yeah. His eligibility is obviously of South African descent.
Yeah.
So I think we will see him in this squad, because what New Zealand are missing in this T20 is those all-round gun players, and that's where they've had really good success with Glenn Phillips. So I think Dean Foxcroft is the next cab off the rank. But what do I know?
Well, apparently nothing, given that you called the Sparks and the Volts to win the whole competition. But no, I think he deserves at least a look into the squad. He isn't as aggressive as Glenn Phillips. If you've got somebody like Glenn Phillips and you've got Dean Foxcroft in the middle of your batting order, one can go, one can anchor. Because Dean Foxcroft, while he's been scoring 50s and 60s, it's been at sort of, your 120s, 130s strike rates. Whereas if you want somebody to go at 200, Glenn Phillips is probably your man, right? So you've got two players there for different game situations. And yeah, as you say, he seems to be the complete sort of package. However, that's in the SuperSmash. If is he able to transfer that to into the international arena? It's all well and good getting out the likes of George Worker and Mark Chapman in a small ground in Auckland, but going to India and trying to get out the likes of Virat Kohli or a Steve Smith or Marnus Lasagna if he's in the T20 squad, is he going to be able to raise his game? And I guess that's the question that New Zealand cricket has to answer.
Yeah, I actually, in saying all of that, I think New Zealand cricket are going to try stick with this T20 squad they've been using for the past 8 months or so. So I don't know, it might be a while before we see Dean Foxcroft. He is young, he's only about 24, so he's got a good, what the rate the players are going now, he's got a good 12 years in him.
15 years,
at least.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yep.
So we'll wait and see if he comes out. Now, before we wrap up the Super Smash, Mark, usually I would do best here, but I'm going to admit something to you here.
Okay. That's a relief, because there wasn't actually that many haircuts that were half decent in a Super Smash this year. I feel like the last couple of years have been really good because...
stole my point.
Oh, did I? Oh, sorry.
That's exactly what I was going to say. The hair in the Super Smash has been bang average.
And do you know why that is? Because everybody during the lockdowns wasn't able to go to a barber, so they had to find a style that suited them. And you seem to like the long flowing locks and the longer beards and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But everybody then was able to go to the barber in 2022, 2023, and they've got their haircut and they've got the stock standard short back and sides with a little bit of length on top. And I know that because I do it myself. So yeah, what's your takeaway in the style department from the Super Smash 2022-23?
Well, I have got something for you, but just before we do that, the other thing I want to add about the hair is if it wasn't cut into a shape I didn't like, I was distracted because half of them had bleached blonde hair, which is horrific, and the other half covered it up with those bandana-y things. Like Michael Sneeden could have had good hair, but he put on that bloody black thing. Anyway, so I'm going to switch it up.
Yep.
I'm going to give a shout out to the players with the best glasses of the Super Smash. In third place, Mitchell Santner, obviously. Only third place because he was away, so third place.
Yep.
Second place, Tim Pringle.
Okay. Yep.
First place, Ollie Newton of the Firebirds.
You did raise this as an 11 3 weeks ago, I think it was. Yes. Spectacles in cricket has become more common, and I'm here for it.
It is becoming common, yeah. That's why I didn't do a full first 11, because we have actually covered that first 11 previously. But I wanted to give a shout out to those three players in the Super Smash. Great glasses.
As a spectacle cricketer myself, fully support spectacles in cricket. That is the Super Smash. Now we need to talk about the moment that I think is going to define our friendship. We obviously at the start of the season, we talked about the things that were going to come up, and we put a lot of emphasis on the England Black Cap series, which starts on Thursday, and the fact that either Renee is going to hate myself or I'm going to hate Renee after the series. And hate is a strong word, and I don't use it lightly, but I'm a sore loser. Okay.
You are a sore loser.
England Black Caps starts on Thursday, weather dependent, first test in Mount Maunganui. A few changes to the Black Cap squad. Yeah,
I'm not gonna lie, I'm not gonna be mad if England win this, because this is not a top tier Black Cap squad.
Here we go, getting the excuses out already. Oh, we would depleted by injury.
News in. Kyle Jamieson ruled out of the test. In my opinion, should not have even been near the squad. Why they thought someone who has come off a back stress fracture and 8 months of rehabilitation could last a 5-day test match is beyond me. He should only ever have been gotten a look in on the short form. But right, sure. Whatever you do, Black Caps.
Yeah, and it kind of goes back to a conversation we had a few weeks ago as well, right? Is that Black Caps have no chance of making the World Test Championship final. So why put one of your better bowlers into a further risk of long-term injury when there's nothing riding on this series for you guys?
Yeah, I can only assume that Jamieson wanted to get back on the field himself. But I'm not a fan. I was not a fan to see him. I love Kyle Jamieson, but anyone could see, even I could see, that was a terrible decision.
Yes.
Matt Henry will also not take the field, awaiting the birth of his first child in Christchurch. I mean, fair enough. Congratulations to the Henry family.
Yeah, another vampire to the world. Congratulations.
Love it, love it. Trent Boult also not considered. Pretty much at this point in time, based on New Zealand cricket's principle to not play Trent Boult after he left his contract last year.
Yeah, so from an outsider looking in, I'm going to reverse this. From an insider, somebody who religiously supports the Black Caps. I mean, I do as well, but what's your opinion on that? Given that your bowling stocks are now depleted, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I was all for it when we had Jamison and Henry in the team, but because I thought, that makes sense. It's Matt Henry's time to shine. He deserves it. He's played 18 test matches, but been basically on the sideline for double that. All power to him. But now that you've lost your two frontline bowlers, the experience of this team is going to rely on Tim Southee and Neil Wagner. And I love Neil Wagner, but I do not think Wagner has been at his best in the past year and a half. So you should have your other best test bowler there, and it should have been a reversal on every decision made today and brought Trent Boult into this team. Literally up until last night, I agreed with everything, but
I'm interested to see
you're playing the best in the world.
I'm interested to see how Neil Wagner goes because previously I would say that Neil Wagner is a really good pick for this team against England because we have previously shown a bit of gullibility to the short ball. We're not entirely comfortable fending it off, but this England team doesn't really do defending. So I actually feel as though Neil Wagner is not going to be, and I'm really, really aware that I'm going to eat my words in about a week's time when Neil Wagner gets a 12 during the whole series, during the whole game.
Yeah.
But I just feel like England will look to take Neil Wagner on because if you can hit him out the attack, so if you can get Neil Wagner going for 8 or 9 and over, you hit him out of the attack. You can be a little bit conservative against Tim Southee because of the pink ball because you know that he's going to move it. Conservative again isn't a word that falls into Brendan McCullum and Ben Stokes' repertoire, but Neil Wagner is the experienced bowler. If you hit him out of the attack, then you can really get after the your first change, second change, third change bowlers. So I'm really interested to see how he goes. Touching on a point from Trent Boult as an outsider's point of view, I actually agree with New Zealand cricket's decision. Trent Boult has turned around and he has his reasons. He turned around and said, I don't want to play for the Black Caps when I can go and get better money elsewhere. Fair enough. But if New Zealand cricket now go running back to Trent Boult, it puts him in such a powerful position.
Yeah.
Cricket generally in the test match arena is, your boards, your management, they are the ones who control and dictate who plays in your team. If you give an inkling of player power superseding, what's to say that all of your best players aren't going to turn down their central contracts? Because when it hits the fan, they know New Zealand cricket will come running back and being like, we actually need you to play in this test. So they can then pick and choose when they play for the Black Caps and when they don't.
Yeah, it's just hard as a fan to basically know we're going into this test and are most likely to lose because we don't have our best players.
Yeah, I fully support that. 100%. I'm really happy that you're going into this test match knowing that you're going to lose.
I'm actually hoping that Jacob Duffy's going to come in and just have an absolute belter, like just take all these wickets because no one knows who he is, because that will be one of the replacements, Jacob Duffy from Otago, who has played some international cricket before, and I'm a big fan of Jacob Duffy, so I'm actually just going to back him and be like, going to be our best bowler, but I am worried that Blair Tickner will get taken to because he is the likely replacement for Kyle Jamison.
Yeah,
but none of that matters. None of that matters because the only thing that matters is that Will Young makes his maiden test century.
I was just about to say, in more positive news, Will Young is apparently on his way from, was it Napier?
Yes, from Napier. He has made it to the team. We'll wait and see whether he makes it. And for the first time in a long time, I think New Zealand's batting lineup is more solid than bowling lineup. You obviously will have Latham and Conway opening, and then Williamson. And then it will be whether they go with Young or Nichols in that fourth spot. And then you go into your likes of Mitchell, Blundell, who has made a full recovery, and De Bracewell likely.
Well, isn't Blundell away at the moment, though, because he's got the birth of his second child?
No, Blundell will link up with the squad.
Is he coming back?
I believe that he is coming back today or tomorrow.
Okay.
Yes, that's my
Oh, that's good.
understanding.
Interesting that you say that your batting lineup is stronger than your bowling lineup, and you're hoping that that's is what's going to get you through. Just going
I
over the
didn't say it'll
England.
get us through. I just said it's unusual.
Well, yeah, sorry, yeah, that's a point. Just looking at the England squad that they've brought over, it is a strong squad, and obviously
very strong squad.
there's a lot of eyes on the brand of cricket that England are playing at the moment with the whole #Bazball situation. I guess the expected first 11 for the first test is going to be Crawley. This is the batting order as well. Crawley, Duckett, Root, Pope, Brook, Stokes, Foakes. Now, I've gone Leach/Potts because I think if the wicket is really green, England probably won't play a specialist. Well, sorry, I say specialist spinner who doesn't actually turn the ball. England probably won't play a spinner. They will rely on a fourth seamer. So I've gone Leach or Potts depending on the conditions. Broad, Robinson, and Anderson is what I would imagine the first 11 is going to be. If they don't pick Leach, they can always rely on Joe Root, and Harry Brook also bowls a little bit of spin as well. And you've got 5 seamers there in Stokes, Potts, Broad, Robinson, and Anderson as well.
I'm very excited to see Jimmy Anderson. Can I ask you one question about this team?
Yes.
Why is Chris Woakes not in the team?
So, yeah, it's an interesting question because he is a good player, and you would think with the pink ball that he maybe would stand a good chance, and he also adds depth to our batting order. But I look at the pink ball test and I look at Chris Woakes' record overseas, so away from England, and it is atrocious. He is very, very good with a Duke's ball, but he averages something like 35 or 40 overseas. So, you look at Broad, Robinson, and Anderson will always be your picks over Woakes in the bowling department. And then you've got Stokes. So there's your 4 seamers. Then you've got Potts, who is good at seaming the ball, because you've got Anderson and Robinson who can swing and seam. You've got Broad, who generally relies on seam movement. And then you'll bring in Woakes, who then is more of a swing bowler than a seam bowler. But you've already got enough swing bowlers in that team. Do you know what I mean? Like the makeup just seems a little bit off.
I know what you mean. Yeah, I'm really, really glad that you explained that to me, because I always assumed that Woakes wasn't in this team because it's actually illegal to have Woakes and Stokes in the same team.
I don't think it is illegal because it has happened before, but unfortunately,
That's
Mr.
ridiculous.
Woakes did not perform in that match.
Yeah, I'm so excited to see Jimmy Anderson. I might even. No, I won't convert, but I will. I do have a soft spot for him. Okay, as we said, all kicks.
Quick question. Sorry.
Yes.
If you could spend a day watching Will Young bat or Jimmy Anderson bowl, what would you choose? And don't say Will Young batting against Jimmy Anderson bowling. What would you choose?
No, I would choose Jimmy Anderson bowling any day. That's not even a hard question. I don't even like Will Young that much. I just really want him to score a maiden Test century. It's just like this obsession that I have that I want him so badly to score this 100. Okay, I do really like him, but
yeah, I also really hope. I really hope that Will Young scores a Test century as well in the next Test series.
He probably will because it's against Sri Lanka.
I just think he's not going to get it in the first Test with all the weather around. I think Jimmy Anderson and Ollie Robinson are going to hoop it early. I just think it's going to be a really difficult Test match for batting. Even Bazball, I think will probably be 250 all out off 10 overs. But the good thing about the weather around is that England only need 2 days to win it or lose a Test match. So, we should still see a result either way.
Yes, as we said, it all kicks off this Thursday, 2 p.m. at Bay Oval in Mount Maunganui. Hopefully weather dependent. Follow us on social media, on Twitter at Back of a Length, Instagram Back of a Length, Facebook Back of a Length. We will be all over those. We are going to the game or the accommodation, depending on the weather, and we will be posting lots and lots of highlights.
I did just have a look at the forecast before we started recording this podcast. Thursday is cloudy, Friday is cloudy, Saturday, Sunday, Monday is sunny and 25 degrees. Woo, so we are going to get some play in. We are going to get sunburnt. I'm definitely going to get sunburnt because I'm an idiot when it comes to the sunshine. If you do go to the Test match, Mount Maunganui is a really open ground. There is no shade. please take your factor 50, drink loads of water, drink even more beer than you do water, because we all want to have a good time. But yeah,
wear your sun hat.
take stuff to protect yourself from the sun, because it is really harsh in New Zealand for those who are coming over from England. I'm personally really excited for the party atmosphere that the Barmy Army are going to bring over, because there are quite a lot of people coming over.
Yes, I'm excited too, although we will be based under Lighthouse 1 most likely. So come and say hi if you are around. Mark will be there for a little while till I banish him to the other side of the ground. Being annoying.
Or I get kicked out. One of the two.
Yeah,
hopefully, hopefully neither happen, and I can just sit and enjoy my cricket.
Looking forward to it.
Quickly before we go, 11 of the week. We haven't done that yet. I nearly forgot about that.
Oh my gosh! How can you forget about the first 11 of the week? Of the week. This one, just inspiration that came to me for no good reason, Mark. But this week I've done the first 11 of Mix and Max.
Okay.
So actually, a lot of them actually coming off this last week of SuperSmash. So in that one we have Barry McCarthy, and at 2 Callum McLeod, and at 3 Cole McConkey, and at 4 Craig McMillan, and at 5 Ken McClure, 6 Nathan McCullum, because I'm sick of hearing about Brendan. 7 Ben McDermott, 8 Glenn McGrath, 9 Tim McIntosh, 10 Angus McKenzie, and 11 my Twitter bestie Mitchell McClanagan.
He is your Twitter bestie. He's been very, very prevalent with you on Twitter over the last few days. Yeah, that is our first 11. A really good one, Mix and Max. I really enjoyed that, actually. Yeah, that is our episode. Follow us on the social medias if you are wanting to see the shenanigans we get up to at Mount Maunganui. We hope to see a lot of you there. We really enjoyed the big crowds that we were able, big group that we were able to get when we went to watch the Aces at Outer Eden Oval. Twitter is back of a length with a little underscore. Instagram, Facebook is back of a length. Get in touch. Let us know where you are. Let us know how you found in the series. And we will be back next week to let you know how dominant England were in the first test.
And we'll be next week to let you know if we're still friends.